sadly, for my generation, many people will never have heard or seen a corncrake. And the reality is that if we don't do something, then it could be a future without corncrake. We know techniques that work, we have the means to do it and the ambition to do it, so therefore we just have to keep doing it. Part of our goal is to make sure that corncrake don't go extinct on our watch. I'm Mark, and I'm the warden here at RSPB Coll Nature Reserve. My job essentially consists of lots of different activities and tasks that tries to maintain and enhance the different habitats that we have here for a range of different wildlife species. I moved here from Glasgow with my wife and my young son. It was quite a stark contrast because, of course, you're going from a heavily populated area to the Isle of Coll, which currently has about 180 people living on it full-time, I think. The environment, the community spirit, and just the wide open space and the freedom that you get living here is, understandably very, very different to Glasgow and what we experienced there. But we absolutely love it. Corncrakes are a cracking little bird. So most people expect corncrakes to be bigger than they are. They're probably about the same size as a blackbird, no more. They're a sort of chestnutty brown, russety chestnutty brown colour. And the thing that is so iconic about corncrake is the sound that they produce. So it's generally made by males. It's described as a rasping crex call, and that's where they get their scientific name, crex as well. There's a rich abundance of wildlife on Coll. Lots of different species of birds, for example. Raptor species or birds of prey, such as hen harrier, buzzard, kestrel, peregrine falcon. And then we have sometimes golden eagles, but much more commonly you're likely to see white-tailed eagles, which is the UK's biggest bird of prey species. Most people probably aren't aware that corncrake are incredibly short-lived. So a bird that is hatched 1 year in the summer, it would then at the end of that summer migrate down to the west coast of Africa and spend the winter there. It would then return the following year if it's lucky and attempt to breed, and then if it was incredibly lucky it would come back for a second year, but at that point that would be the end of its life. In 2007 there was about 120 calling males on Coll, and sadly more recently it's been more like 50 calling males. Essentially the reason for that is that there was a real acceleration in the mechanisation of agriculture, and the techniques used meant that fields could be cut much more quickly and efficiently than they otherwise had been. The problem that poses for corncrakes is that they would be spending time in this vegetation when they're laying eggs or rearing chicks, and if the cutting of that field was synchronised with that time, that very sensitive time in their breeding cycle, then they would be killed, unfortunately. It doesn't have to be that way, of course. If fields are not cut until a certain point through the summer, it means that the first and second brood have time to at least get to the point where they're physically capable of getting out of the way of danger. The other thing that can be very effective is the method used for cutting the field. So in the silage fields here on the reserve here at Coll, it's Corncrake-friendly mowing that is used, and what that essentially means is cutting from the middle of the field outwards. And what that does is it pushes the corncrake out to the edges of the fields and potentially into adjacent cover areas which still has very long vegetation, and it means that the corncrake don't have to scurry across very, very short, just cut vegetation and get picked off by predators.
My name's Rob Wainwright. I'm a farmer on the Isle of Coll. I was an army doctor and a professional rugby player, and we upped sticks at the end of my rugby career. I left the army, finished with medicine, and we both farm on the Isle of Coll. I think farming does a fantastic job, but could undoubtedly, we could do better in terms of looking after the environment, creating biodiversity, and looking after keynote species. One of the issues with corncrake management is that you're producing a lower quality product because it's not as green, it's gone to seed, it doesn't have the same goodness in it anymore if you're having to do it in the second half of August as opposed to for us mid-July. Things are not economically viable here on most farms unless there is some form of support.
What farmers need is they need to be subsidised effectively so that they're not going to be out of pocket and they can continue to run their farm as a financially stable business, whilst at the same time trying to do what they can for corncrake. in the month of June, we head out at night time and we try and listen and pinpoint exactly how many males are calling and where they're calling from. And the reason that we do it at night is because the birds are much more active at that time. Now I can hear there's a corncrake calling there. In fact, that sounds like there's two. Oh, it feels amazing when you first hear the corncrake when they come back in spring, because of course myself and the team here at RSPB Isle of Coll, we've put in a tremendous amount of work over the winter to try and make sure that all the habitats are ticking over as best as they can. But also I'm thinking about my son and his generation and thinking, you know, I want to be involved in maintaining that species and seeing more corncrake for when he's a little bit older and he can really appreciate it. If you were going to design the perfect habitat for a corncrake, it would be made up of a couple of key plant species, and they would be nettles, iris, coarse grass species, and also umbellifers such as cow parsley. And if you're able to get that blend in a patch, then it means that they've got the structural cover which keeps them safe from aerial predation, for example. These cover areas in the spring, they ideally would be about 20 centimetres in height. It means they're very, very difficult to find for other predators, and it also means that there's a good blend of invertebrate food that the corncrake can find and eat. So there are lots of really nice natural iris beds like the one behind us here that corncrake will use, but we would like to extend these areas further and farther around the reserve. So what we've been doing is, at the end of the summer, we've been going out and just by hand harvesting iris seed, and then we've been propagating those in little pots with compost and raising those, and then we'll aim to plant those out to extend the cover of iris for the corncrake.
This is a lifestyle that we have out here. It isn't just about business, and we want to enjoy what we do. There's a lot of other things like corncrake-friendly mowing that are just part of our fabric now.
I think there's lots of farmers out there that have an appetite to get involved in these schemes, and these are the schemes that essentially fund farmers to carry out different work to improve things on their farm for corncrake, and it would encompass things like corncrake-friendly mowing, delayed cutting, and putting up fencing to create early cover areas for corncrake. So I think if that could be achieved, then I can see quite a positive future for corncrake.
Being able to put together a customised set of measures to manage corncrake in here that don't have to tick all these different boxes is the reason we're doing it. And it's done on a phone call, a chat, some lines on a map, and there's no point system, there's no long application form, there's just a conversation and hopefully an element of trust.
The optimistic side of me says that there are people out there, there's lots of farmers and landowners out there that want to see corncrake on their land. And so I think, looking to the future, if we have a future where people take up the agri-environment schemes and those methods are implemented, then I can see the corncrake coming back in terms of numbers, and that will be of benefit to everybody.